All right. Good evening, everybody. We are so excited that you are joining us either live or watching this call. We are Heart of a Mother Moms talking about homeschooling, which is our thing. And tonight's call is about questions and answers for homeschoolers who are COVID inspired and that they are deciding to homeschool at least for the near future or strongly considering it and kind of want to figure that out. So you are all welcome in our homeschool community, and we want to help you in whatever ways we can to help you be successful and serve your families. So that's why we're here. Before we start diving into the questions, let's begin in prayer. And I found this prayer for the graces of motherhood because we can't do any of this homeschooling thing without grace. So we'll ask Mary for that as we begin in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Powerful is your intercession with God, Mary, for you are his mother. Tender too is your love for us, for you are our mother. Confidently then, I come to you as a child, poor and needy, to seek your aid and protection. In every trial of motherhood, I beg your aid. For your holy assistance in guarding and directing each tiny soul with which God entrusts me, I call to you. In every sorrow that comes to me in my motherhood, I confide in you. That I may have strength to bear cheerfully all the pains and the hardships of motherhood, I lean on you. That the sweetness of motherhood may not, through my neglect, be embittered in later years by pains of regret, I trust in you. That the will of God may always be fulfilled in me and through each act of my motherhood, little and great, I beg your aid. Never forsake me, dear mother, my hope, my consolation, my confidence, and my trust, but ever be at my side to aid and protect me, your needy child. Amen. Mother of love, of sorrow, and of mercy, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Yay, Mary. She helps. So, I think that hearing from various new to homeschooling moms over the past couple of months, those who are brand new to homeschooling and think that they're going to homeschool for a while, and those who are brand new to homeschooling because of COVID and might just do this for a year or a little more, a little less, have some similar questions. So if you're listening to this call because you are pretty sure you're going to homeschool for the long haul, there will be wisdom here for you as well. But most of our answers are going to try to focus on something that would be applicable to families who are not in this for the long haul, something that will be practical for you, because I think in this time of stress and anxiety, practical tips and real advice is going to be helpful to you. So when we are answering questions, we will try to answer them from the perspective of what would I do if I was only homeschooling for a year, but there'll be times too that we'll kind of adjust that a bit because it's good for everybody to hear. So this first question is kind of something for everybody. It is, what if I feel like I'm not doing a good job teaching my child? And I definitely know that we all feel that, whether we've decided to homeschool or not, long haul or not, we all regularly feel like we have self-doubt, we have questioning. Stacey, what would you say to that mom who wants to know, how do I do this if I feel inadequate?
Right. I think you just hit it on the head when you said like every mom feels that way, like not just for homeschooling, but like when their kids don't do their chores, or when their kids speak back to them, or if their kids don't behave well in church or whatever. Like every mom wonders, like, am I being a good parent? You know what I mean? But I think too that when we feel that way specifically about homeschooling, and you're a mom who has homeschool, like prayerfully come to homeschooling, I think you have to just keep it in your mind that self-doubt is not coming from a good place. You know what I mean? Somebody, do you see what I'm saying? Like it might not be you. It might just be, like a spiritual attack as well. is what, I mean, that's kind of like heavy for, that's kind of heavy for this question probably. But I just feel like every time that we get attacked as a mom, when we feel that way because like our kids aren't doing chores or our kid, you know what I mean? When we're questioning our parenting as a mom, I always try to go to Mary, and I always try to remind myself that who wants me to think that I'm doing a bad job? And it apply, I mean, and that's not just a parenting thing, that also applies to homeschooling. So, you know, in those times when I felt like it has to be me, like it's my fault that something is not working, you know, I have to take that step back, go to Mary. We're just talking about Mary. Go to Mary and just say, like, am I really the problem, or does somebody want me to think that I'm the problem?
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does. That's very wise.
Like, you know how he doesn't like he wants to get between the mother and their child.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wants to get in between the mom and the child. So after I take that step back, after I go to Mary, after I just kind of chill out and think about it, then I think I can look back and like, okay, well, is it the curriculum? Is it my kid isn't getting enough sleep? Is it because my kid needs to go play outside? You know what I mean? Like all of those other factors that are contributing, because I don't think people realize that how much like the outside factors contribute to the learning, because especially if your kids have been in school, you don't see them like you don't really see them during that like educational instruction time, like how they sit down at a desk, how the teacher teaches them. Like you don't really have that insight until you try to like teach them how to subtract. And that there are all these other factors come into play. Like maybe they do need to go outside for like half an hour and really burn off some energy before I sit them down to teach them math, you know?
Yeah.
But I always go to prayer first, because when I'm thinking that dark thought, you know, like it's me, it's all me. I always go to I just step back and go to prayer. I go to Mary first, like.
Definitely.
Ooh. You know,
Amy, you're nodding a lot, Amy. Do you have stuff to add to that?
Just a couple of things that reminded me of how, you know, God gave you these kids for a reason. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to say God's not going to give you more than you can handle, because I've definitely been in situations where I'm like, I don't think I can handle this. But God gave you these particular kids for a reason, either to help you grow in certain virtues, to help them grow in certain virtues. And I mean, your goal is to get yourself, your spouse, your kids to heaven. And there's going to be various ways you get to try to accomplish that goal, however difficult it may be. Yes.
You know that, what is that expression where like God doesn't call the equipped?
He equips the called, or something like that.
The called, right. Yeah. So I try to always remember that when I'm thinking like I am doing a bad job, like when that dark thought comes into me, I'm doing a bad job. I step back. I'm like, wait a minute now. Don't go there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I do that too. I do that step back. And for me, usually if I feel like I'm not doing a good job, it's because I'm comparing what's happening with my kids in my home to someone else's home, someone else's family. And I have to remind myself to stop doing that, to stop and pause and pray. And then I look around at my family and figure out maybe there's some areas I'm not doing a good job. That happens. You know, I might be being inconsistent, or I might be being snappy, you know, and I need to solve that. Or it might be my kid needs to sleep more, go outside, change curriculum, all those things. But the first step is for me to just go to God and stop looking at everybody and everything around me and look at my kids. And usually when I do that, I can look at each kid and be like, okay, it's not a huge disaster. It's like, this is a problem. This is a problem. This is a problem. It might not be my fault. It might be my fault, but I can look at it more realistically if I just stop myself and evaluate that. And you're right. This homeschooling we think, oh, we're going to do this because we need to educate our children and we need to lead them to Jesus and we need to make sure that they are formed well. And then we forget that this is also the way we're going to be led to Jesus and we're going to be formed well and we're going to be sanctified, probably even more so or in a more dramatic way than our kids. So being open to that, even if you're just homeschooling for a little while, I think is key, because we always have to be open to however God is working in our lives. And if we feel like this is what we're doing right now, then that's the way God is saying, this is your path to holiness right now. So just do this and keep that in mind as you get those frustrated thoughts. So that would be my perspective on that.
One other thing to add, it's the whole, I feel like I'm not doing a good job. Find a good friend who's going to tell you you are doing a good job. I mean, everybody needs that like encouraging friend who gets you, who knows you, and and it helps if they even know your kids, because they can tell you, no, I know you're doing a good job because your kid did X, Y, and Z. Like if you can have a couple of those friends, it's really nice and a nice confidence booster, and helps you feel like you can keep doing it and keep going. And that's helpful. Not in a comparison way, like Jenny said, but just you need that encouraging friend.
Sometimes you're like the hardest on yourself. And then when you have a good friend tell you like, no, like I see the way your kids are nice to each other, or, your kid was talking to me about something, and, the way they express themselves, and like other people are going to tell you, like your tribe is going to tell you, like you're doing such a good job. Like you're your harshest critic. You know what I mean?
This is true. We are. Excellent. Okay. That's such good advice. You ladies are so wise. I think that's a good place to start too, because we all feel that way. I mean, 13 years in, I still, find myself in that spot, and we all feel that way. So just know that, but having a good friend or having someone you can rely on is key. So let's switch to super practical. We got, of course, a bunch of questions about curriculum. They were, what curriculum do you use? What's a good curriculum that can line up with traditional or public school? How do I evaluate the scope and sequence of a box curriculum with where kids were at a brick or mortar Catholic school, public school, whatever? So tell us your thoughts on those questions, given the audience, Amy.
So state schools will have state standards, and you can find these standards on your state's education website. In Texas, where we are, they're called the TEKS, or the TEKS, TEKS. I looked at Louisiana earlier because one of the people is from Louisiana, and theirs wasn't as easy to find, but it was on there. And you can kind of look to see, this is what my kid is supposed to be doing at the grade they're at. And I'm always surprised at how, like, it's not anything crazy hard, generally speaking. It's like a kindergartner needs to know their colors and be able to write their name. It's not anything super crazy. Like, you'd think it would be more intense than that, and usually it's not. I've been really surprised at how the standards, the basic minimum your kid is supposed to meet, for most kids it will not be a problem to meet that. For most kids, you're probably already at or above a lot of the state standards for the grade they're in anyways, just because you're involved in their life and you're reading them stories and talking to them. Like, that makes a huge difference. So if you're really concerned about the state standards for your area, you can find that on your state's education website. And then you can go to whatever curriculum you're looking at, and they will say in their math curriculum or whatever they're using, these are the things that this covers. So you can kind of match it up by looking at it and say, okay, my kid at the end of first grade needs to know how to add 2-digit numbers, and needs to know his shapes and colors, and needs to know how to measure things with non-standard units of measurement, which basically means instead of a ruler, you're using a paper clip to measure. It's like, it sounds really intense and difficult, and it's really not. So then you can look at the math program curriculum is using and say, okay, this covers addition, subtraction, measurement, whatever. Oh, it's all in there. For the most part, a curriculum that you buy for an age or grade level is going to cover the basic standards most states will meet. So it's, for most programs, that's not going to be a problem. So that's not a huge worry. I would say it might get trickier when you get to middle school and high school, because those standards might differ a little bit. It gets trickier because of AP courses or honors or something like that. But the basic standards are going to be met. by any standard curriculum for the most part. And then how do you choose what curriculum will work for you? Know yourself. Like, do you need help teaching a specific topic? You're going to want a teacher guide for that. Or maybe if your kids are older, you'll want an online class that you can use for that particular subject. A lot of people use an online math program because they don't want to teach math, and that's fine. So know that any curriculum you choose, as long as you can do it, as long as you do it consistently with your kids, and if they're young, the consistency is really more important than what you're actually doing, because you're setting up those habits for when they do go back to school. And you're setting up those habits when the teacher says, it's time to sit down and get started. Please take out your pencil. Please get out your red book. All of those things are things you can still do at home. And you can maintain that sort of routine that they're used to having in school in your own home by keeping those things, having a consistent order that you do the topics in and things like that. I don't do that, honestly. I let my kids pick what they want to do because it doesn't matter. But if I were sending my kids back to school, I would try to probably be more consistent. Like, we're always starting with math, because most places start with math for thing. And then I would go on to reading and then whatever's next. So those are just ways you can help ease that transition from to them coming home and to them going back to school. Is pick a curriculum for the grade level they're going to be at. Most of that will cover state standards, and keep a consistent routine and do school on a regular basis to maintain that routine with your kids for when they transition back.
I would agree definitely with that routine being key. Yeah, because they're used to the routine, and if you don't keep the routine, they may rebel, or they may be resistant more to doing any of it because you don't have that consistency. Stacy, what would you say about choosing curriculum to line up with schools?
Right. I agree with Amy. Like, every state is mandated to post their standards on their state education website. But if you have trouble finding that, and you know what books they use, you can go to the publisher's website and see the scope and sequence of any curriculum out there. It's the same, like one of the questions was, how do you evaluate the scope and sequence of a box curriculum? It's on there. It's on their website. CHC, Seton, Modge, like all of the box curriculum providers have their scope and sequences on there. So you need to, print it out, and then you can compare it to the scope and sequence of, whatever the school is using from the publisher's website. I mean, they're going to put it on there because they want the school districts to buy their books. So it's going to be on there. So that's just like another way of you finding.
And for those who don't know,
to be, teaching.
Scope and sequence. Scope is what the program covers from the beginning to the end, and sequence is the order it goes in. So it's kind of like your lesson. It's like we start with shapes, and then we go to addition, and then we go to measurement. That's the sequence, the order. The scope is the amount of things that it covers, just from being in. Yeah, I just want to explain that in case somebody had no clue what we were talking about.
Right.
And I think it
didn't even occur to me.
No, and I think it's key to also mention that on some websites, it's not called a scope and sequence. It might be called a curriculum. It might be called a, what's the other word I see sometimes? But it is just a list of all the things that they teach in that book or in that level. But there are some other terminology that they use, but you're just looking for a list of what's taught.
Right. And you know what I actually find easier than the scope and sequence is just if you can see the table of contents of the book. I feel like sometimes that's just easier because it tells you the scope and sequence.
Yeah.
But as a list with page numbers, and you can see how many pages cover that topic. So I think that's just another way of finding out what it is. But that question about what is a good curriculum that can line up with the traditional public school? Now, I don't want to say that accreditation is, a good thing or a bad thing. I just want to point out that of the Catholic providers, Seton, Mother Divine Grace, Kobe, who are regionally accredited. Some third-party accrediting agency looked over their materials and said it's comparable to what a school would provide. Now, is that super important? Not really, no, but if in case that's important to you, I just wanted to, point that out, that when you enroll in these programs or when you buy their books, or when you enroll in these programs, you're going to get a transcript, and you should be able to take that back to your public school and say, look, this is a transcript from a regionally accredited program. I mean, I'm not saying that that's what's best for, your individual families or whatever, but I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think that I have, or I know I've heard that I expect things to be different with COVID, and they're going to be much more just whatever. But especially if your kid's going back into a private school of any kind, they like to see that proof of what they accomplished. It's not always required, but it certainly can help.
It's like I think some schools might be like loosey goosey because they'll be happy to have you back.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good point. Like the private schools might not be that way. I don't know. I mean,
well, and then two other key points you made me think of is, one is that just because a program doesn't say they're accredited means they didn't pay for that process to become accredited.
Right.
Are their materials comparable and maybe equally as good as another program? Maybe. You have to look at that and decide for yourself. But just because it's not accredited doesn't mean it's still not up to par. It just means they didn't go through that process.
They didn't go through that. Or they're not a school. Like Catholic Heritage Curricula is not a school. It's just, a curriculum provider, So for business purposes, it isn't really important for them to be accredited, whereas like Seton markets itself as a, fully accredited program. So for them, it's a good idea. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make that, because I know there are a lot of curriculum options out there, and moms who are trying to figure this out are probably overwhelmed with all the choices. In general, if you're doing this for just a year, I would say either just buy a box that is Seton or Colby or Mother Van Grace or whatever, and just do exactly what they tell you, or figure out what your school's using and try to get those things. I would not try to get too creative, because you need simplicity and you need the structure of just doing the next thing. I think the question, what curriculum do you use, was asked. Again, like Amy said, I would not recommend to someone who's not in this for the long haul to spend the hours and hours of time that I do pulling together curriculum for my 4 children in the summer. I mean, just hours and hours. That's just not something I would recommend unless you've had some experience or you're really wanting to feel this out. I know you'll hear a lot of conversations about learning styles and those kinds of things. And I was just talking to someone today that there's much to be said for learning styles, and they're valid, and there's, but you can take almost any curriculum material and teach it in a different way to appeal to a different learning style. So you don't have to try to find the perfect curricula that matches your kid's learning style necessarily. It could be helpful, but if you just need straightforward, easy, and something appeals to you, just go for it. And then you can adapt and tweak as you go, because I think that that's honestly what most homeschoolers start out with, even without COVID. If you're a brand new homeschooler, a lot of times just pick something, go with it, and then you're going to kind of adapt and adjust as you go.
Or even a veteran homeschooler who knows that they're going to have a baby year coming up or something like that. There's been seasons of life where a box curriculum is just perfect, even though you're in this for the long haul. But if you're gonna having a baby year, or if you're having a year where you're moving, or you have a year that there's illness all the time, a veteran homeschool mom will buy a box. We'll buy a box curriculum.
And some moms thrive on a box however many years they're homeschooling it, because that's the way they thrive.
The whole thing.
I think a couple of things to remember, just to kind of wrap this section up, is that it's not going to be perfect. what I do isn't perfect. And all of us, there's no perfect. There are going to be gaps, and your kid is going to go back to school at some point and not have learned something that they did in school. And that's okay, because
everybody else has going to have a gap and they didn't learn something too.
They're all going to be in the same boat. You know how like when they go back to school and over the summer and then everybody forgets everything, like it's going to be a really long summer.
Yeah. Well, and our kids have gaps too, because the depth of knowledge of everything we could possibly teach them, I mean, we have to pick and choose. We can't teach them everything. And so my education had gaps, and I'm sure yours did as well. So I try to encourage people not to get stressed out over that idea of trying to cover everything. Do your best. This is crazy situation. Make sure the relationship of your child is between you and your child is put first, because you want them to succeed and you want them to make progress. So that's my gold standard of knowing if you're doing a good job. Is your kid making progress? If they are making progress, then you're doing a great job. It might not be as fast as their classroom counterparts. It might not be as fast as their siblings. It might be faster. But if they are making progress for their own, their own education, then you're good and doing well. What else? I made notes here. Oh, and the other thing, this is just a tiny thing from when we were talking about state minimums and scope and sequence. That is the minimum. I think it's key to mention that your local school might be doing more because they're allowed to do that. So don't be surprised if you're like, oh, we didn't cover that, or I didn't know we had to cover that because it wasn't in the state standards. That's the minimum. If your local school district decides, but we want to add this in third grade, or we want to add this in first grade.
They're going to read War and Peace over the summer,
Yeah. So there is some of that you can't predict, and that's okay too. But just keep that in mind and don't be surprised by that kind of thing. So let's switch over to now we've got some ideas on curriculum maybe, but let's switch over to how to get that done. We had several questions about kind of scheduling your day. Should I focus on one child at a time, or should we all work together so we all finish together? How do you organize your day? Also, what do they do when they're done with school? Because I think if you've been reading about homeschooling for a while now, or a little bit, you might realize that homeschooling doesn't take as long as schooling in a traditional sense, because there's just not all of the extra of in and out of classrooms, or in and out of teachers, or recess and lunch, and and just the strategy of teaching to 25 people until they understand a concept. You just got one. As soon as they understand it, you move on. So what would you guys say about scheduling with those questions? Amy, you want to start?
Sure. So I've tried multiple things over the years. What I found that works best for us is for me to start with the youngest school age kid, and everyone else that can read has a list of what they're going to accomplish in that day and over the course of the week. So I start with the youngest schooled kid, and we work on whatever they need help with, and then I move on to the next kid, and then I move on to the next kid, and then I move on to the next kid. Now what that looks like is every day I'm working with my kindergartner, and every day on every subject. And every day I'm working with my fourth grader on 2 or 3 or 4 subjects. And every day I'm working with my middle schooler on math. And I'm checking in with my high schooler every other day, or every day if he has problems. So as they get older, it stretches out. That gets trickier when you have little kids that you're trying to fit in there amongst stuff. One of the solutions for that is to do school when your little ones are napping. I totally utilized the TV some years because it would keep them happy, and they were totally okay watching Curious George instead of the Science Kid, and hey, they're learning stuff while they're sitting there, and I'm working with the sibling in the other room, and everybody's happy. We have enlisted older kids to work with younger kids. Caveat, that did not work until we were 10 years into homeschooling. I could not get that to work until I had really big kids. So if that doesn't work for you when you have a bunch of kids that are 8 and under, I'd say that's probably pretty normal. So that's what has worked for us as far as scheduling. When my kids are done with school, they get to go play. They go outside, they go play Legos, they bug their siblings who are still doing school. That totally still happens even at our house. The little ones, when we're doing school, in some years I've put together boxes or activities they can do only during school time. So it's a fun thing that they can only do during school time totally have done it for quiet time in the afternoon too, because then it keeps them quieter in their room just a little bit longer so we can work on something. There were some years I did not use nap time because, quite frankly, I needed the nap time. If it's a baby year, I need to take that nap too. I need that break. So it's like, okay, it's quiet time for everybody. I don't care what you do, but you can all go be in your room and be quiet for an hour because mom needs a break. And I mean, honestly, like, we're 10 years in. I didn't start working through nap time until probably 2 or 3 years ago because I needed the break too. And that's okay. Recognize what you need and make it work for you. We don't start at 8 a.m. We start around 9. My kindergartner's done by 11:30 with lots of breaks built in. My high schooler's usually going until probably 3 or 4. Part of that's because he had an online class last year that was from 3 to 4, so it took him that long to get through all his stuff. So yeah, and then we have, when it's not a COVID year, we had afternoon activities that the kids could do. We'd meet friends at a park. We had American Heritage Girls for a kid. We had soccer practice for a kid. You know, we had things, book club for a kid, various things that would take over the afternoon. So, you know, you have to get dinner done and get out the door on time and stuff like that. So you have to find a rhythm that works for you, and that's going to depend on the ages of your kids and the number of your kids and all of those things. And then you'll get a rhythm going and you'll be like, yes, I finally got this to work. And then something will happen and you'll need to change it all up.
Like a stomach bug or something will hit your house.
Yeah, but the baby starts teething, or all of a sudden your kid's having a meltdown over math, so it's taking like an hour every day instead of the 30 minutes it used to take. But yes, so find a rhythm. Know that rhythm will probably get messed up and you'll have to tweak it again, and then you'll find a new rhythm and it'll all be okay.
Yes.
I cover everything. Am I missing something?
No, I don't. That's totally true. That's it. I would just add that when I have only littles, or like elementary kids, not really littles, but like if I'm working on my elementary kids, I am pretty much going back and forth because I have 2 of them right now, and they both need me for most things. They have lists, and there's a few things they can do independently, but for the most part, they really do need my attention or help, or at least me in encouraging them and reminding them they know how to do it. And so it's kind of this ping pong, and I'm there doing that. Would it be easier if I work with one child and let the other one do something else and then switch? Maybe it's something that I could try. But for me, it works to ping pong. The key, though, is to make sure that the kid has something to do when you're working with the other kid, kind of like Amy said. If you're going to work with one kid at a time, make sure those other kids have stuff they're supposed to do, even if it's go play with Play-Doh or go outside or whatever. The question was specifically asked, you know, what do you do when schoolwork's done for the day? I don't want my kids to watch TV all day. I think that is an important consideration for COVID schoolers, inspired homeschoolers, because they're going to get their work done earlier, and you need to think about as a family what you want them spending their time doing. And maybe that means investing in some fun books or kits or craft supplies or something that will encourage them to spend their time constructively, because they could possibly become issues, either screens being an issue if you don't like too much of that, or just behavior, like because they're bored and they tend to act out when they're bored, and they'll pick on their siblings when they're bored, and that's a problem. So I think that would be something I would highly recommend, is to think through what you want them to do. But yes, the last thing is just to reiterate what Amy said, is that your kids are going to have more work as they get older. They're going to be able to do work more independently, and they're going to finish at different times. I don't think, depending on the ages of your kids, I don't think it'd be very easy to finish everybody at a set time, because you're going to have some that are just bored or doing filler because they're done. So let them be done when they're done would be my advice. Stacy, did we miss anything?
I would say that when you're trying to craft what your rhythm is going to look like, it doesn't have to look like what it was before. So if, for example, you're overwhelmed, or you have so many kids, or there's no one to watch the baby or whatever, if you need to do schoolwork on Saturday and Sunday when dad is home to help you with baby, or to take little kids outside, like, you could throw your kids outside if they're old enough, but what if you have like a 2 and a 4-year-old Like they can't be outside by themselves. So if you have to do something on Saturday and Sunday because daddy's home to help you, then do it. You know what I mean? Like you don't need to ask anybody's permission. Like, you know, or if you need to save the hardest subject for the evening when daddy comes home to help with little kids, then do it. Like school doesn't have to be from 8:30 in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't have to be that way. So I would say don't like close yourself off to those times, because like if your kid is still in school, you're helping them after school with homework, aren't you? Like when dad comes home and helps them with homework, you're helping them with homework. Like you're still doing schoolwork in the evening. So when you're trying to figure out your rhythm for homeschooling, you know, your schedule, you might have to do some work in the evening if it's better. I mean, why not? Like nobody's gonna tell you anything.
Yeah. No, that's very wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have friends, even long-term homeschoolers, that deliberately do that. They'll save,
Right.
you know, some reading lesson or some math lesson for the evening after everybody's kind of happy and fed and daddy's there to keep things
Right.
quiet.
And I have some friends, whose kids go to bed late and sleep in the morning. So like their natural school day would start like after lunch, you know, or something like that, whereas some people are finishing, you know, right around lunchtime or whatever. Like there's no right way to schedule your hours.
The one thing I did want to add is that sometimes, like, I know when I started homeschooling, I thought it was like only my kindergartner could do school because the other kid wasn't old enough. But don't be afraid to take your little ones along for the ride with your big kids. They will pick up on stuff so fast. And it's amazing what a 4 and 3 and 2-year-old can learn and remember and pick up on from watching their older sibling do school.
Oh yeah.
I had 2-year-olds that knew letters and colors, and I did not teach them that because I was too busy dealing with the older siblings
Right.
to deal with doing something with a 2-year-old who I don't care if they learn colors and numbers because they're 2.
Right.
And then I had 3-year-olds that would learn poetry with us because the big kids thought it was funny to hear him say the words because he couldn't quite say it right. And it is pretty darn cute to hear a 3-year-old say a Walt Whitman poem. I will say it's kind of amazing. So don't always feel like you do have to set up entertainment for your younger sibling. You will have to, but sometimes their entertainment is doing some of the activities with you and your school age kid, and that's totally okay. That's one thing. Homeschoolers, a lot of times we don't differentiate grades and ages as much because honestly it's easier to pull as many together as you can at once.
Sometimes.
Sometimes. Yeah, not for math. That doesn't work for math, but for a lot of stuff it does. And so it's okay to don't feel like you have to push little kids out of the way.
Right.
Because they will learn doing it with you, or just even being in the same room as you, coloring a picture or playing Legos.
Like you can't stop them from learning. Right. You know? They're going to learn something.
They will be much happier. Yeah, and they will be much happier to be included. So like I always had, my little ones would have their workbooks, and it might have just been a dollar store or whatever, or a spiral notebook that was just like their older siblings, and they'd scribble out on every page, but it was their school books and they got excited about that. So that's some way we foster excitement about learning. There was a separate question I didn't read with this, but we're kind of talking about how do you handle homeschooling the older kids with the younger ones around, and this is good. You know, the baby, the one thing I always tell moms too is remember that how you treat those babies and toddlers while you're trying to get school done with the older kids is a lesson to your older kids on how to treat babies and toddlers. So if you are constantly frustrated that the baby and toddler is interrupting, your big kids are learning that's a bad thing. But that's just how babies and toddlers are. So I try to work really hard to remember that when there's an interruption or when, you know, a younger child needs something, that I treat them still with respect and make sure that like I recognize my kids are watching me treat a younger, less, you know, or a more vulnerable individual in this way. The baby is the lesson is what one of my friends always says. And then another great thing that I just left out of the previous discussion that keeps my kids occupied, either in between work with me or when they're done for the day is audiobooks. Audiobooks totally count for kids reading, and it's really important actually for them to hear the spoken word. So do not be afraid to get your library's audiobook program, or maybe you have access to other audiobooks, but I think that those are, for a lot of families, really a big help when you have several kids.
Oh right. Yeah, LibriVox is free, but that only has books that are out of copyright.
Yeah.
Yeah, public domain.
You know.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Oh, you know what? We didn't talk about when it's okay to focus on one child at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Like your rhythm, like when you're observing your children and you're first starting out, the child that needs the one-on-one will reveal themselves to you.
That's such a nice way to say it.
Every kid is so different, and every kid learns differently, and every kid behaves differently, and you will learn so much about your children in this process. That is very, very, very true, Stacey.
You will know after a week or two that this child needs the one-on-one attention.
Yeah.
You know, so don't be afraid to spend the first like 2 or 3 weeks just observing. Just have a couple of plans in place and just observe how they react. I know some children have trouble with like attention and jealousies, or you know what I mean? Like that child will tell you, you know, that they need it. I just wanted to say that because, you know.
That's a really good point. And you bring up kind of another good point that I think a lot of, well, I know Amy and I tend to do this, but a lot of homeschoolers do start their year light. When we have a start day of school, we probably are not doing all 8 subjects in the first week. We will do like focus on the 4 R's: reading, writing, arithmetic, and religion, or we will pick maybe our kids' favorite subjects and start with those to get a rhythm going, a routine going, and consistency, so that it makes, and then we'll add in as we keep going the other things, so that you kind of have that practice, because it can be overwhelming to just throw it all in and feel like you're starting. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit. We had a couple questions about, and this is going to be harder with COVID, but how do you stay in community with those who attend school, whether that be Catholic or private school? And how do you make sure your children get all their social, emotional needs met, especially if they have special needs? I think this is, you know, talking about how do we homeschool and not be isolated. During COVID, I have no idea. I don't know. I can't help you. No.
Anybody's guess.
Anybody's guess.
Anybody's guess.
A few things that come to mind COVID specific. You know, one is we have been going to parks and being outdoors with friends when we can, when it seems safe and those people are safe. I have heard of families who decide to quarantine on purpose so that they can spend time together. So like, you know, I think it was like 3 or 4 families decided, okay, our husbands are working from home. Nobody has to go anywhere. So for the next 2 weeks, we're going to be super careful. Nobody's going to go anywhere. And then we're all going to get together. We can get together because we've definitely been careful. So it's kind of a cool idea that I wouldn't have thought of. But there are families, you know, that are willing to get together kind of one-on-one also, depending on what you've been doing, where you've been going, and those kinds of things, and what your state is allowing. I think in general, as homeschoolers, making sure our kids get their social needs met is something we have to plan for, and just like a school subject. We get this, you know, you've probably heard well, what about socialization? And we joke about it, and we hate that question because we're like, well, socialization in a classroom, especially where they're 6 feet apart with masks on and can't touch each other or go to recess, is not socialization. But, you know, socialization can look like a lot of different things. It can look like going to hang out with your extended family. It can look like going to the grocery store and talking to the, you know, the cashier. It can look differently in homeschooling, but it is still important. It is still, I think, important that we figure out ways for our kids to mature socially and interact with other people. If there are activities going on, like Amy, I know you mentioned book clubs and soccer and those kinds of things, that is one way to get their social needs met. As they get older, I don't know if anyone has middle school, high school kids, this is like, for me, it transitions from, yes, let's get together with my friends and you can play with their kids and you're going to like them because they're my friends. But it transitions when they get in that preteen, teen year to, okay, I'm going to make sacrifices so that you can see your friends. And I do that. And we do that. We drive, we schedule, we host, we do whatever it is we have to do to make sure those older kids get to see the people they want to see, because that is important in that stage of development for them to figure out what relationships are about outside the family. So that's what I would say about community. If you are COVID homeschooling and you're pulling your kids out of a school environment and a lot of your friends are still doing the distance learning thing, I think you can still stay in touch with them, you know, and that doesn't seem as distant to me as like those of us who've never been in a school situation and have to find friends like at the park, at the library, at the church, wherever homeschool group we can find. But it has to be intentional either way. And maybe one of the things my elementary kids did during COVID was write their friends notes and letters. And sometimes I would mail them and sometimes I would deliver them. And that was a weird way for them to stay in touch in my mind, because they're like first grade and third grade, but they wanted to do it and made them feel connected to their friends. They colored pictures for them, and stacks of papers. This one's for this friend, this one's for this friend, this one's for this friend. It was just their way of staying connected. And so I accommodated that. Thoughts on how to stay connected, Stacy?
Yeah, I feel like there's two different answers. I feel like there's the answers we would have given like a few months ago, and then the answers we give now. Like, I mean, like I would have said like homeschoolers socialize to the point where we have to limit our activities to do the schoolwork. Like, you know what I mean? Because you think because you don't have the school schedule that you have room for more activities. But you don't. We've been in those kinds of situations where it's like, we got to stay home and do school today. Sorry, no Chick-fil-A. Or sorry, we'll just go through the Chick-fil-A drive-through. You know, we won't stay and play. But COVID has certainly like thrown a wrench in everything. I will say, I just want to like encourage people, because in like the question was, how do we stay in community with those who attend Catholic school? I just wanted to say, like, from the perspective of a military family, the friendships that we've created that are really meaningful, we've stayed in touch with those people. And we've lived all over the planet. And we've stayed close to the friends who are really important to us. And I feel like this COVID thing might actually reveal to some people who, you know, those friends that are going to be, you know, ride or die. Mm-hmm. And then whose friends were like, you were friends with them because of situational things. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
you know, when you're friends with somebody just because you have classes with them, but then like you see them outside class and you're like, I don't have anything in common with this person.
And that's okay. And that's okay.
Right.
I think it's good to go in recognizing that there are different kinds of friendships.
Like different levels.
Aristotle has said that. C.S. Lewis has said that. There's different types of friendships. There's different levels of friendship. And I think that's a good point, that this will probably reveal what a lot of those friendships are and what are the meaningful friendships.
Right.
For like you and for your kids.
Right. They're not friends with you just because the kids are in the same classroom with your kids, or you see this mom every day at pickup. Like, you're friends with this person because they're meant to have like a role in your life. And I just want to say that, like, as a military person who moves every 2 years, that's absolutely the case. Like, we have deep, true, meaningful relationships with people who live all over the planet. And I stay in touch with their moms and my kids especially now that they're older and have FaceTime and Google Message or whatever, like Marco Polo and all those things. Like, they do stay in touch with those friends, and they have beautiful friendships. And so I just feel like, you know, I just want to point that out, that maybe this is a chance for you to see, I don't want to say who your real friends are, but see, like, you know, how those people are going to have a role in your life, and, you know, even though you don't see them 5 days a week.
Right. And I think especially during this time, it's key to recognize that your kids don't need 30 friends. Like they're good with two. Like, because it's just natural, right? You're like, they know all these people, but do they really know them, and are they really friends with them? But if you can connect them with just a couple people.
Right.
Also, I know my kids as siblings have become a lot closer now that we've stayed home a lot more, and they can't go out and do stuff, so they're finding things to do together that they didn't otherwise necessarily do, because my age span is really wide. So it's really cool to see them figuring out things they can do together because they are home due to missing activities and missing friends.
Right.
Yeah. Anything else to add on that topic?
I don't want it to make it seem like you don't have real friends, you know? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to make it seem like that. Like, you really don't have as many friends as you think you have. I don't want it to seem like that. I just want you to I just want people to realize that this is like an opportunity,
Right.
you know? And the people who love you, they're going to be the ones to text you. They're going to be the ones that message you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
your people.
Right. Anything to add, Amy?
They're going to want to find you.
Yeah.
Just since it was brought up, like, how do I keep in touch with friends from Catholic school? In theory, you'd be going to mass together, so your kids could see each other after mass on Sundays. That would be something. You know, maybe you don't go to the same mass time now, but maybe that's something you could coordinate with the other family, or, you know, that would be an option, just so they can, like, you know, say hi and maintain that relationship. Park days have been helpful. But it's so tricky now. One of my daughters has been giving letters to one of her friends, and we actually live in the same neighborhood. So it's hilarious because we'll drive my daughter over to drop off the letters on their doorstep, and they will walk or drive their daughter over to put the letters in our door. So that's just something really sweet that they can do. For older kids, you know, Zoom, Google Chat, stuff like that. My son has become very adept at that. I didn't even know he could do that.
Oops.
No, it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. You're doing that. It shows up on my emails. I don't care. But it's just, it's funny. Like, use the technology to your advantage. Like, set up Zoom play dates or whatever. If your kid likes that. I found a couple of my kids really can't stand them, but a couple of kids are just so excited to see their friends on a screen they don't care. So, yeah, find ways to get together and find ways that your kids can see their friends, whether it's virtual or in real life, and to maintain those relationships of the, you know, 2 or 3 friends that they really like and you really like.
Awesome. Good answers. You guys are amazing. Okay, we have a few more here. They get more specific as we go. So hopefully we can wrap up with these questions. Number 8, let's see. How can I make my kids better than me? I mean, if I'm not good at writing, how can I make sure my kids will write well? And that is a totally common, you know, even for those of us who are homeschooling long haul, is like, there's something I'm not good at. How can I teach it? Amy, I know you wanted to answer this one. Are you able to, or did I catch you?
You're good.
All right.
Time, so.
Awesome.
They got to stay up late tonight.
I know my kids are like running around. I'm like, y'all are normally in your rooms right now.
So one of the things I do is I outsource that subject. I find a tutor or a teacher or an online class that can cover that. I had a kid who really, really wanted to know Latin. The only Latin I know is from songs that I sung in college. So I am going to be of absolutely no help. And I tried Latin 3 times. It did not work. So I gave up and I outsourced it. And we are both so much happier now. So that is totally an option. I don't know that I haven't noticed it being a big issue for elementary school, but that can definitely be a concern once you hit middle school and high school. And like, how am I going to teach biology? I don't remember biology. Or how am I going to get geometry? And I can't remember how to do a proof to save my life. So one of the options is to get a tutor or an online class. Some curriculums, especially for upper levels, include DVDs or CDs or a number you can call to get help, especially with math. Thank goodness people like math and can do that for our children.
Those unicorns.
Right. I know, they're fabulous, right? Math is beautiful, and I believe it's beautiful. I just can't teach that it's beautiful very well, apparently. For writing, I like to, again, as Jenny pointed out earlier, as long as there's progress being made, if you're doing it for a year or 2 years, they may not be able to get better than you because they're still going to be in like elementary school. You're still going to have that. You're still going to have that over them. You made it higher than elementary school. You will be better than them. I promise. So as long as there's progress being made with whatever program you're using or practice of that particular subject that you're doing, it will be okay. It will be okay. And every kid's going to have their strengths and their weaknesses. So maybe that kid won't be better than you. Maybe that's going to be their weakness even more than it was yours. And that's okay, because they'll more than make up for it with a strength in something else.
That's a good point. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, we definitely use DVD lessons or video lessons when we need to, and online classes for those older kids. The only other tip I would mention is to, depending on your curriculum, I feel like most homeschooling curriculum is deliberately written for the mom to do the teaching, whereas a more secular textbook is not written that way. It's written for a certified teacher to teach the material. So if there is a
classroom,
right, to a big classroom. So while at the beginning we said you could just look at your public school and use the same exact books, you can. But if you don't feel confident in doing that, like if you feel there's a weak area for you, it might be really hard for you to teach with that book, because it's not designed to be taught at home. It's designed to be taught to a classroom by a teacher. So my other tip would be, you might want to look at homeschooling curriculum for those subjects that you're the weakest or that you feel you need. A lot of them have a script for mom to read. Like, this is what you tell the kid, and this is what they do. Or a lot of them are really designed so that there's not a ton of teaching. It's more so you're reading it together and learning it together, and then practicing, especially like writing. I'm thinking of some materials that we use. You know, it's just we read it together and they practice the things as we go. So that would be a tip. And you're learning with your kid when that happens. And so that's, good progress too. Stacy, did we miss anything?
I just want to point out, that myth where the mama's got to do everything. She's got to raise beautiful children. She's got to volunteer at a school. She's got to cook healthy meals. And she also has to do self-care. So she has to exercise and diet. And, that myth like bleeds into homeschooling, where the mom thinks that it's entirely up to her, that she has to do every single little thing. And that's just not true. Like, that she has to be the teacher for every single subject. You get to the point where oftentimes you're just the facilitator. Some of your kids end up being independent, and you just kind of like, provide the little checklist, and they're like, oh, I can do this subject on my own. There is that point. But for logistical reasons, it's really impossible, especially when you have a family of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids, for you to do all of the teaching every single subject 5 days a week. Like, logistically, there's not that many hours in the day. So I wouldn't hesitate to outsource some of the teaching. Like I pointed out in another Zoom, we were talking about language arts, and I love writing. I love teaching writing, but I am more than happy to outsource writing to IEW, to Andrew Pudo at IEW, because he teaches every single lesson in that program, and he's engaging and dynamic, and he tells jokes, and he's funny, and it's a break, for me and the kids. And I am more than happy to hand it off to the master. That doesn't mean I don't love teaching writing. I do. I love it, but for logistical reasons, don't be afraid to make that decision where you outsource to a tutor, to a video programmed, curriculum, to a recorded class, to a, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't have to be all you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would totally agree about the scripted lessons. Like, my children are dyslexic, and we use, an Orton Gillingham based program, and it is scripted. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't have a master's in, or I'm not certified. I'm not a certified Orton Gillingham trained person. I'm just a mom. I have a scripted lesson, and it works for them,
Definitely.
It doesn't have to be all you.
Right. And I think one thing that you mentioned is really key. I mean, as a long-term homeschooler, one of my primary goals is to teach my kids to read so that they can learn independently. Because as soon as they know how to read, I can give them something and they can go off and do it, and they teach themselves. And so you'll find a lot of homeschoolers are good at teaching themselves something about reading material and figuring it out. Sometimes they need the video or whatever, but if you have readers, see what they can do. See if they can, figure this out. Don't feel like you have to walk them through every step. Say, do you think you want to read this lesson on your own, and let me know if you have questions, and see how they do. They might do fantastic. They might need your help, but give them that opportunity. Amy, did you have anything to add? You were
just one thing that it made me think of is my friend has this saying, the perfect is the enemy of the good. And finding the perfect program is probably not going to happen. Finding you will not be the perfect mom. You don't have perfect children. But if you can find a good program that helps you, and you can be a good mom and you will have good children, that's enough. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's a really excellent point. Like that. Okay, so let's do this question. So we're in COVID, and I don't know about you guys, but my kids complain a lot about all the things we can't do. And I'm grateful that we're already homeschooling, because I'm pretty sure that some kids are complaining that they can't go back to school, or maybe they're not on board with homeschooling because they're like, I'm gonna miss my friends. But you as the parent have decided this is the best path for us right now. This is the right thing to do. And how do we motivate our kids to want to do the work, to do the work with a good attitude? And we have that in normal homeschooling days that are not COVID as well, that sometimes kids are just, don't want to do it, or or complain a lot about it.
Who wants to do math 5 days a week? I don't.
I don't either. But I also don't want to mop the floor ever or clean toilets ever. And somehow that gets done. I delegate it. Stacy, did you want to? I can't delegate math. I know it's hard for kids. Okay. Told you I was tired. Stacy, how would you motivate your kids to want to do work or to be more positive about homeschooling?
Simple. You bribe them.
Valid.
I mean, come on
M&Ms
now.
are excellent teaching tools. And chocolate chips.
Like, let's be real. If they're in the classroom, especially when they're little, like, how many times do they have like a chart with stickers or like color-coded behavior, whatevers, and then they get a prize at the end of the week? Or what? Okay, classroom teachers do this. Okay, so why can't I? Just saying. The older kids desperately want their phone the minute they can have it. So guess what? The schoolwork needs to get done first. And I know, like, one of the questions was like, I don't want my kids to see TV all day. They don't. But if they get their schoolwork done, then they can watch whatever they want to watch, for the next time. If that's what it takes to get it done. I mean, I'm not looking to be a martyr.
Yeah. No, I think that's wise.
I mean, it's like my mom is right over there. My mom was a classroom teacher for 32 years, and she's taught every grade level in the elementary school. She had a big old jar of gummy bears.
That's right.
That she used for years before they stopped letting like teachers provide food or whatever. I know because I ate those gummy bears every day after school. Like,
so I think I absolutely agree with you. I bribe, or the natural.
That's not the politically correct answer.
No,
but
no.
That's
and I'm not going to contradict you in that it's not a good idea, but I know it sometimes doesn't work with some kids in some seasons. I have some kids that bribery doesn't always work. They're like, I don't care. I don't want that thing. I just really don't want to do my work.
How like when they tell you when you're a parent, and if you say the word no too much, like no loses its effectiveness, like you should tell the child that's not a good idea. Or I feel like the bribes can be like that too. But if you make it a natural part of your day, like, you can watch Paw Patrol or whatever their favorite show is. You can watch this thing the second you do this, or, mama's going to break out the kinetic sand or whatever it is that they're really, really into.
Mm-hmm.
then use it. I mean,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, there's like a formula that you can use. If X, then Y. If you would like to play with Play-Doh, then finish your math lesson. And then it's not an ultimatum. It's just saying, when we can play with Play-Doh as soon as your math lesson is finished, it follows with that rhythm of your day. And it doesn't make you out to be the bad guy. It's they're choosing what they would like to do. If they would like to play Play-Doh, then they will finish their math lesson first, because that's how you set up your routine. And I just want to point out, God has given you authority over your kids. And I don't mean to be authoritarian, but like, you have authority over your kids. You are the boss. And it is okay to act like the boss and say, when this is done, then we can do this next. I really want to do this. Great. How about we finish your math lesson and then we can do that as soon as you're finished. And if you keep that upbeat voice, a lot of times that helps, because then it's not drudgery. It's like, we're so excited to do the next thing, and that's so hard for me because I'm not excited to do that.
They don't need to know that it's a bribe.
And I don't want to say it's a bribe.
Don't tell them that.
Like, if they ask, we want to watch TV, great, let's get X, Y, and Z done, and then we can do that. Like, make that a part of your day. Like, if you, again, set up that routine, that consistency, and there will, in theory, be less arguing about what needs to be done, because that's the routine, to do X, Y, and Z, and then they get to watch TV.
We're gonna finish this reading lesson, and then when we're done with that, we're gonna get the popsicles and we're gonna go outside.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I think you mentioned this, I think
I was just gonna say, or we're gonna finish this. I'm gonna pop some popcorn, and then we're gonna watch a movie. You know what I mean? Like things like that. That's not really a bribe. That's just the next thing we're gonna do.
Yeah. But Amy, I think you mentioned something that's really good. You were talking about how hard it is for you to use that pleasant, joyful, voice. And for me, one of the things I've noticed, especially when the natural bribes, if we will call them that, aren't working, is a lot of it is my attitude and how I am working with the kid. Because are they going to want to work with me if I'm a drill sergeant? Or are they going to want to work with me if I get angry every time? Are they going to want to sit and do their work if I'm being, upset? And now, not to say I shouldn't be upset when they're doing something wrong, obviously, but I try to work to make that interaction so positive that they want to sit with me and do the work, especially as they're really young, kinder, first, second. Really important to me that when we're working together, I'm staying pleasant as much as possible. They're enjoying that special time with mom. They're getting their work done. I'm praising them for the silly little things they get done that aren't meaningful at all, but I'm like, yay, look what you did. Mm-hmm. I want to set up that positive relationship with schoolwork so that they're not just, completely looking at mom going, I don't want to be with you right now, because that happens. I do that. As they get older, it doesn't work as well, and I feel I have to be firmer. And usually my response is, when you're ready to do work, come back to the table and we will work. But I'm not going to sit here and nag you or waste my time with you. And I will pull out something that I need to do, or I will go do something that I need to do, laundry, I don't know, read a book, something that I need to do so that they're not monopolizing my time also. If I've repeatedly, they have a bad attitude and they're not working with me, I'm not going to let them waste that time of my day. But they don't get to do whatever it is that everybody else is going to do after they get their schoolwork done if they don't also get their schoolwork done. And sometimes for us, that's just a yummy snack. Like we drink water all the time, and then they get a special drink. And so like they can have orange juice or whatever's
sugary
available.
drink.
It's simple stuff. But if they don't have that schoolwork done, then the answer for me is going to be no. No, you don't get a cookie. Everybody else get a cookie because you didn't get your schoolwork done. I'm sorry. But some of it is just, them growing into that maturity of self discipline and a work ethic. And we are teaching them that too. So to have that mom attitude makes a really big difference. And it's hard when I'm having a lousy day or I don't feel good and I'm trying to be, I will tell them, oh, I'm not feeling great today, or whatever it is that's causing me to feel grumpy, or I'll say, hey, you know what? Your attitude is making it really hard for me to stay happy right now. And I would like to stay happy, but you're being really ugly, so that they know that. So mom, I think that makes a big difference. And then the other thing I would add is in this time of COVID where everybody's kind of lamenting all the things we've lost is to both lament with your kids the things that they've lost, because it isn't fair and this isn't the way it's supposed to be. And we are meant to live in community and do fun things. And God did give us this big, beautiful world to enjoy. It's not supposed to be this way. This is a sadness and a disappointing thing. And we should accept that and identify with our kids, but don't let them stay there, and help them to be grateful for where we are and what can we do because of this. So for homeschooling, I know we often do things called just because you can days, where like we can take today off because guess what? We can. We can go to the park. We can take our school to the park. We can cancel school for today, pop popcorn and watch a movie. You know, we can do some things that they can't do when they're in school. So I try to highlight those things and with them, you know, say, we can do this. So in COVID, same kind of thing. Okay, we can't do that. What can we do? What can we positively take out of this experience?
Ice cream for breakfast.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Something crazy. Yeah, because you can.
Spaghetti for breakfast. Yeah, we've done like spaghetti for breakfast because it's like, I want spaghetti, you know, so why can't I have it, you know? Of
course. All right, awesome. Okay, we just have like 2 more questions that were towards the end that were submitted, and then we'll open it up to you guys. We're running a little long, but I think we can finish up here. One person asked about college applications, so I definitely want to address that. Since our goal here is to talk to people who are homeschooling only because of COVID, if your kid is in high school, I don't think I would pull them out of school just for COVID. I would have them do the distance learning that the school is providing, because it's really hard to get schools to track your credits as a homeschooler and put them back in that environment. For me, that would be too challenging. Because right now, the friends that I've talked to that have started homeschooling their kids in high school and then tried to put them back into a public or private high school have had problems with the school not accepting the work that they did at home. And so then they had to like repeat credits, do summer school to catch up and that kind of thing. So I think I would highly recommend not to do that. If you're, so if you're doing distance learning and you're in high school, you have access to school counselors who can help you with college applications. If you're talking homeschoolers in general, let's talk about that in the group. Specifically, the Heart of a Mother High School group would be a great place to talk about those things, but I wanted to make sure to address that since someone asked. Did you have anything, Amy or Stacy, to add to that?
I would say, like, if it's their senior year or junior year, that would be a tough decision. If it's 9th grade or 10th grade, they might be able to, I mean, just speaking like from the military perspective, like every time the kid moves during the high school situation, like they have that problem. Like their credits may or may not get accepted because, you know, in one state they need to take this, this, and this, and another state they need to take this, that, and the other. So that it often is the case that a military kid will have to go into the summer or take a 5th year or whatever, you know, but that is kind of touchy if they're going into 11th or 12th. I would also say that I guess that in that situation, it would be handy if they wanted to homeschool to go into an accredited program. There might be, and I would say join HSLDA in case you know, if they want to go back into public school, that they give them attitude about, oh, does their school count? You know,
right.
I would recommend joining HSLDA just to have that legal backup.
Yeah.
And then maybe considering a regionally accredited program. I mean, because there's different levels of accreditation. You know, if your program is like accredited by like the National Association of Private Schools, that doesn't look the same as a regional accreditation. You know, like the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools also accredits universities. Like, I feel like it has more weight. I mean, that's arguable. It's arguable, but I feel like it has more street cred. I don't know for certain, but if that's the case, like, and you really feel like you're called to homeschool, your kid wants to do it, like your high school kid is asking you for it, then just go have that backup of having HSLDA help you craft what it needs to look like, so that when you put them back in the school, they're not like, meow.
Yeah. And I think my answer would be different if it was a senior. Like if this was their senior
Right.
year and they were like, I just want to earn the rest of my credits at home. Totally fine. Totally fine. It's that putting them back into school after a year that I think could get tricky.
Right. And I've seen it done. I remember in high school, like, this is not going to be a good story, but like some kids were failing at our public school. So they would transfer to the charter school and earn those credits and then transfer back in to the high school. I don't know exactly how that happened, but it did. I'm just saying.
Amy, anything to add on the high school, college, COVID homeschooling thing?
No, the only other thing I could think of would be the SAT, ACT debacle that's kind of happening right now, because they've been canceling tests left and right, and people can't find testing locations within like 3 hours of where they live.
Right.
But I think most colleges have kind of come to the conclusion that they're not going to rely on that all that much because of the situation with getting it done. An alternative for some schools is the CLT, but not all schools accept that. So that's just something else to take into consideration, that the standardized tests that they use to get in is going to be kind of fudged by colleges. Most colleges have come out and said, yeah, we're just not going to really worry about that in the next couple of years, because they recognize it's going to be hard for the kids to get in to take the test.
I'm going to hope that the admissions office at the colleges and schools are going to see the dates and be like, oh, that was COVID.
That was 2020.
You know?
That was 2020.
I mean, we can only hope they would be that fair, but.
Okay, one more really specific question submitted at the end, and then we'll see if these ladies have any follow-ups before we close. This is, I have 3 boys. Is there a one-stop shop curriculum that's awesome for all 3 grades, 2, 4, and 6?
I would shoot for the 6-year-old. Shoot for the 6-year-old and bring a 4 and 2-year-old along with you. Oh, those are the grades?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
2nd grade, 4th grade, 6th grade.
That changes things. Yes. I mean, this is one of those places where there's a difference between skill and content areas. Could combine for content subjects such as science and history, but your kids will be at such different ranges for math and reading ability and things like that. Like, you're going to have different curriculum programs for those other subjects. Like, you could totally pull them probably together for religion and just use like Baltimore Catechism and celebrate feast days and call it good. But your math and language arts, you're definitely going to have to differentiate. You could totally use like all of Seton or all of Colby or stuff like that, but just know that each of your kids is going to have different things in there. And a lot of the times, if you call those companies, they will help you, especially, I know Maj does, the Mother Divine Grace does this, where you can say, we want to study American history this year or whatever. And then they will help you cull those particular supplements for each of your kids that would cover that historical period. So you're not having to do 3 different histories or 3 different sciences and stuff like that. Like, I think that would be something. History and science are one of those things you could definitely combine, but it's trickier when you use a box curriculum because they have certain levels they're supposed to do. So that is one you'd have to enroll, talk to your counselor, and kind of see what they recommend that you do, and they can kind of help you work that out. But for things like math and language arts, that would be really, really difficult to combine them for a lot of that stuff, just because that's such a big range of ability. Like, your 2nd grader still needs a lot of your help. Your 4th grader, you're kind of baby stepping up. And your 6th grader can probably do a lot of that stuff on their own. You're just kind of fine tuning what they already know. So they're at very distinct stages, and that would be really hard to combine them for all those things.
Right.
Stacy?
I happen to have an incoming 2nd grader and 6th grader, and they could not do. I mean, I can't even imagine what I would do with both of them at the same time. That wasn't, I don't know, catechism. I mean, not even that. Just because they're at different developmental stages. Like, it would be so much more work to try to make something work for all of them than it would to just do their own thing for language arts, math, I mean, maybe history, but my 7-year-old is not going to understand what I'm telling my 12-year-old. I
Yeah.
mean, he might hear random things like, oh, George Washington or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's just not developmentally appropriate. Now, I think you could probably craft like a morning basket. Maybe, like maybe some poetry, maybe like definitely liturgical living for sure. I think you could definitely do as a family. Read aloud time, probably. But those core subjects, especially if they're going to go back into the public school, they're just way too different. Like
Yes.
if they were going to be full-time homeschooling for years, I mean, maybe we could talk.
Yeah, that was going to be my point, is that if anybody is listening and they're probably putting their kids back in school and they're not even considering long-term homeschooling, I would recommend against combining kids for most things, because they don't do the same things in their school setting, and they won't progress. You'll have somebody who will progress, but then another kid won't progress because they've already heard this before, or it's something they've already covered. So, in that regard, the way the question is worded, I kind of summarized it, but the way the question is worded, I do wonder if she meant just, is there a curriculum provider and I should just pick this particular one because it's good for boys. I think that depends on the boys. In general, we tend to generalize and say that boys are very busy and move and active and they have a lot of energy, which is true most of the time. Some are more academic than others and like to do more academic work. For the most part, they do not like to write at those ages. 2nd and 4th grade, do not worry if your kid is resisting writing stuff. I'm sure they're used to it from the school environment they came from, but they're still probably going to resist it with you. And so doing things orally can help simplify when you're trying to do too much, all the different things. But I honestly have not found a box curriculum that's like ideal for boys that are busy and move all over the place. I mean, you can kind of pick and choose.
Right.
You can just pick one and do it and let them do the school upside down on the floor with a clipboard. We've done that,
Right.
Or hanging off the edge of the couch and they're reading their reader or whatever.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of boy life, doing their math facts while they're jumping on the trampoline. Yeah. Like I said, you can take any curriculum and teach it or present it in a different way that appeals to your children most of the time. But as far as boys in school, it's a whole, just Google it. There's school itself is designed for kids who can sit in a desk and do the written work that they need to do. And sometimes that doesn't fit our kids, which makes us beat our heads against the wall until we're like, wait, this is the way God made them.
Right.
I need to work with this instead of against this.
Right. And perfectly equipped them to be what he wants them to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I just say I have 3 boys and they're all different temperaments, all 3 of them.
Yep,
and
mine too.
Yeah.
Same here.
The way I teach
my 3 boys.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm glad we all agree on that point. So that's all the submitted questions in advance. Michelle or Christina, you guys have been patiently waiting and listening and hopefully gleaning some goodness out of this. Is there anything you guys wanted to ask that has not been answered tonight before we wrap up? Christina's all, you covered it. This is a lot of information. I am overwhelmed. Michelle, anything jump to mind?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Whoa, ladies.
You'll think of something the second we stop.
That can be
I should
end.
have asked that. Yeah, I should have asked that.
Always.
Definitely.
You can ask in the group then.
Yeah, ask in the group.
Definitely ask in the group if you think of things after the fact. But the goal of our call was really just to kind of cover these questions that really are the questions that most, families ask. It's the basic stuff that we all want to know. And we all ask ourselves this every year too. What curriculum are we going to use? What is our daily schedule going to look like? Because it does change every year, sometimes every month. Hopefully not curriculum every month, but you know what I mean? The seasons ebbs and flow.
The season of life.
And so we have to adapt. We have kids who don't want to do their work. We have kids who want their friends. I mean, all these questions are things we're always reevaluating. So I'm glad that they were helpful to you guys, and I hope that they'll be helpful to everyone else. Amy and Stacy, do you have any closing words of wisdom or encouragement for the COVID-inspired homeschoolers?
You got this.
I think I would add the disclaimer that, like, if you're watching the other videos, like the other YouTube videos, that like we try to answer these in the, trying to keep the frame of mind that you're probably going to put your kids back into the public school. So if you've seen the other videos and you're like, she didn't say that in the, that's not what she recommended in the other video. Well, it's just because, we're just that big disclaimer. You're probably going to put them back into the public school, into a brick and mortar, private school or whatever. So we try to be as helpful as possible, with that frame of mind.
Right. Right. And that's why we do have the 2 subgroups of Heart of a Mother. We have Heart of a Mother first year for those starting homeschooling who are like, I'm in this for as long as it works. And then Heart of a Mother homeschooling for now, which is for you guys who are COVID homeschooling and you're really not thinking you're going to keep doing this forever, and need that advice. Because I would give different advice, in different situations. Just like I'm going to give different advice to the mom who has a newborn, a 2-year-old, and a 6-year-old than the mom who has like a 5-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 9-year-old. Like your lives are going to look different, and that's the way God made it. They made it different. But I guess my closing thoughts would be, if you are doing this homeschooling thing even a little bit begrudgingly because you feel like you're being forced to do it because the schools aren't offering what you think is acceptable, please have an open heart that this is where God's putting you right now, and this is what God's calling you to do. And maybe he might want you to do this longer than this one little brief time. I'm not one of those people who believes homeschooling is for everybody. I think we all have to discern that for our families. We all have to figure out what works. But I encourage you to keep an open mind and open heart and have that good attitude that, okay, this is where God's planted me. I'm going to do my best to bloom in this situation and do the best that I can to serve my family and my kids and love my kids. Because above all, it's about the reason you're doing this is because you love them and you want the best for them. So don't lose sight of that. Is my thoughts. Anything else, ladies? Oh, well, thank you so much, Stacy and Amy, for being on here. And I know you guys answer questions in the group all the time, so you'll continue to be helpful. Jump in the group, ask those questions. I don't have any more Q&As scheduled right now, but I could see how in a couple weeks when more information comes out about what schools are doing, we may need to schedule another. But there's the recording from last night. The previous week, we actually did some Q&As earlier in the spring and lots of curriculum calls and stuff. So if you're seeing this on YouTube, check out the others.
Yeah. Watch those. Those are fun.
Those are fun.
No, but like, you know what I mean? Like, those were fun because we got to delve in deep into like one specific thing. And we spent like a whole hour talking about like math, or like a whole hour talking about just language arts. It was really fun. Yes.
So the one call for COVID homeschoolers that I would recommend if you want to dive deep into something is listen to the morning basket call, because that's something that you guys could totally do, is have your together circle time as a whole family, and do a few things that would unite you guys and help see the true, the good, and the beautiful that is in this world amidst this craziness. So I'm glad you mentioned those calls, Stacy, and that's my top recommendation.
They're fun, while you're folding laundry or whatever, like just watching the calls.
Awesome. All right. Well, ladies, thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great night, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye-bye.